All right, let's come back to class. And to add on to what we left off with, we talked about being concerned about sanitation. And it was brought up during the break about hand sanitizer. The last thing you want to do on a short-term trip is break out hand sanitizer and everybody's lathering themselves and the people are like, what is that smell, first of all? And what are you guys doing? And then when they whisper between each other and somebody goes, that makes them clean because we make them dirty, it immediately hinders the gospel. So I'm not saying don't use it. Use it discreetly. For example, I carry a small one with me. I've had malaria 3 times in the hospital. That means if I get sick, my immune system is ruined. If I get sick the wrong way, I won't make it. I won't make it home for my next trip. So I carry a really small one with me. Maybe it's in my pocket or my backpack or whatever. And when I go to the bathroom, sometimes I don't have to go to the bathroom. I just need to put on some hand sanitizer before I eat with my fingers. Because if I don't, I've shaken all those hands and those kids and all of the sicknesses, I will get sick. So I use it, but I never use it publicly, right? I never do the whole lather thing in here. Okay? Don't do it. So just be discreet about it. Most cultures have soap. Most cultures have water. The interesting thing about the guys that I worked with originally, the refugees, they would wash their hands after the meal. They would use just water before the meal to make them feel clean. And then they would use soap after the meal to get the food off their fingers because they all ate with their fingers. And I would ask them, can I use soap before the meal? And they would look at me like, why would you want soap before the meal? That's crazy. And then the Lord spoke to me. They've never had a microscope. They don't understand bacteria. It's been ingrained into me. Wash, 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 hand sanitize, all that stuff. They don't understand it. So I would then use hand sanitizer privately somewhere, and I would get my fingers so they don't smell like hand sanitizer when I go back to them. All right. So number 1, I can't believe he just did that. That pastor really stick his fingers up his nose? Crazy. Now, number 2, I can't believe he just said that. Now this one's the best. All right, Daniel's going to be my volunteer because I know him personally. So come on up. Daniel is, in this story, my wife. Okay? Now I could never say to an American woman what I'm going to say to Daniel because I would offend her forever. We got 2 ladies in the class. I will never say this to you. But this was said to the American ladies constantly. Is Daniel in? Is he back in?
Now.
Are you right there? Okay, good. All right. So Daniel is my wife, or one of the other 3 American missionaries that live with us full-time in the refugee camp. Every time they walked in, so go over there and walk in, and I say, oh, Heidi, you're here. And you say,
I am.
Hi, I'm here. And I say, you are looking so fat today.
Okay.
Straight face, right? Straight face. Every time they would see my wife, they would tell her how fat she was. Now, my wife is a skinny girl, right? You know my wife, right? She's very thin. She's not fat at all. After even having 3 kids, she's still not fat. But what did she think every time they said that to her? Oh, dear God. Why did that man just say that? Okay, Daniel, you were a great guy. You ever give Daniel a hand? Thank you, Daniel. You are looking so fat today. What were they really saying?
She looked healthy.
Why would they say that in that way?
Because in their culture, they go through famine and they don't have much resource or food.
Refugees spend most of their life hungry, and a lot of them starving. Our national director had to drink his own urine to get across the desert to find the refugee camp that he finally met the Lord in and got saved in, and now he's our major missionary. This man went through starvation at levels that we would never experience in America. Now, I was hungry as a kid sometimes. My parents split up. There was issues. But I could always go to the government and get food. Any homeless person living in America can find food. They just choose to live on their own in that way. And so these refugees weren't saying, I want to offend you and call you fat. They were saying, God's blessed you. So they were trying to lay blessing on my wife, and my wife was utterly offended. Now, do you see why I didn't call you fat? Can you imagine? You come up, you're looking so fat today. Every day they said it, over and over and over. Oh, I forgot, Daniel, come back up, come back up. It gets better. Okay, so you're over here, you gotta be in the camera. So Daniel is my wife. Now, as an older man, I can do this to a younger woman as long as she's not my wife. As Daniel comes in, which is actually, you're Heidi. Heidi, you're looking so fat. As I'm talking to Heidi, I'm pinching the back of her elbow to check her fat level, because you can do that. Pinch the back of your elbow, that tells you how much extra you have on you. And so they would be like, oh, you're so blessed. And they're pinching her. And then the ladies would actually grab her butt and start squeezing her butt. Okay, I won't embarrass you anymore. And she's like, what's going on around here? Was anybody trying to offend anybody?
No.
Absolutely not. Were the Americans mortified? Yes. How much humility does it take to allow another person to grab your butt and call you fat? And you're like, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it, right? Tell me anytime. This went on over and over and over. Our ladies finally just said, okay, we're going to embrace it. We're going to embrace it. Absolute insanity. All right, number 3. Did you just see that? Now, I need another volunteer. I need a guy. You're young enough. I'll have you come on up. Come on up. This is the one that offended me personally the most, okay? In this analogy, I think you're right here. Yeah, you're within the camera. I can see you there. In this analogy, you're me, right? And I am in this guy that's really tall with hands bigger than mine. And as we're walking down the road, I'm praying, God, give me, the American missionary, the ability to connect with the African so that we can do discipleship and teaching and training. He's no better than me. I'm no better than him. We're one. And the Lord one day answered my prayers. How did he do it? As I'm walking along, I feel this man's hand slip into mine. Now, I'm walking down the path with a grown man. Now, I wish we had better camera angles because we could walk for a while and be in the path. And I'm just walking, and we're holding, and we're walking, and we want to really express. We use the back of the hand, we touch each other, and we're walking. This is going on and on and on. What's happening in my heart at this moment? Am I excited about it?
No.
Everything in me wants to what? Pull away. God is saying, I'm connecting you with him spiritually. He's saying, I trust you. I want you in my life. I'm opening up my heart to you. And what do I want to do? Run as fast as I can. Okay? Your hands sweating yet? Okay?
Starting to.
Yeah, you're starting to. Okay? And we're going to hold hands for a while up here. Because you just know, right? I know we go back a little bit. I know his home church and I know his missions pastor. To make matters worse, my brother, which is the biggest joker in the world, and my senior pastor, is behind me doing what? Snapping photos. And I'm thinking, if my dad's not saved, and my dad's one of those guys, old-fashioned, son, if you do anything at all that looks like a homosexual, I will beat you down. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get home, and my brother's going to pull out the photo at Christmas, my dad's going to see it, and he's going to come over and start hammering me, because that's the world that I grew up in. Now, are you getting comfortable with our hand holding yet? All right, yeah, you're cool, okay. We did this before, didn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, he did this with me 2 years ago at his church. So, as this is going on, everything in me says, are these people homosexual? Is that what they want? Because in my culture, all this means. You never hold a man's hand in public. Now, the next time I saw him, now luckily this only went on for a half an hour, I was dying. The next time I saw my buddy, what did he want to do? Pinky swing. So now we're just kicking it. We're going down the road, and his big old pinky wraps around my pinky, and we're just pinky swinging. Just talking and cruising and cruising. When we get to our destination, now we're sitting down and kind of act like you're sitting down so they can all see you. Where does his hand go? Right on my thigh. Now, I'm not going to touch your thigh. Okay? Right on my thigh, and it sits there for an hour. I'm dying. All right, you did a great job. All right, give him a hand. Are you sure you weren't in prison? I'm absolutely dying inside with a man's hand on my thigh. About a week later, after I worked through the issue and said, okay, how can I accept this cultural difference? I said to one of my friends privately, do you guys deal with homosexuality a lot here? And he looked at me like, what? And he goes, no, I'm all, well, your men hold hands. And he goes, you think that's homosexual? He was utterly offended that I would think for one moment that was ungodly. Because in his world, it's saying, I appreciate you, right? I love you, not in some weird way. I honor you. I want to be your friend. I said, what do you do when you meet a homosexual? They said, we've never met one. And if somebody does act like a homosexual, we lynch them. Now, the Christians wouldn't do that, but they said culturally, if a man comes into this culture and he acts that way and he hits on another man, we will take him outside, we'll hang him by a tree, and we'll beat him to death. And everybody will be a part of it, because homosexuality in this culture, saved or unsaved, is the worst thing that could ever happen. So now I'm interpreting this all wrong, aren't I? I think it's something that's wrong, and they say it's something right. They're trying to extend love, and all I feel is, don't touch me. Don't get near me. Don't you ever do that again. I had to get used to holding men's hands all the time.
Did the women do that as well? Or was that
No. The women would do it, but not like the men do. The women would do it like women do here, where they might touch each other's hands or hold each other for a moment, and then they go on their way. They would never keep holding the hand. I'm like, just stop. So then I'm digging deeper into the culture, and I said, okay, now that we're talking about body language and what's right and what's wrong, can I put my arm around my wife? Because I noticed that none of the husbands ever showed public affection, ever. And they would say, no, the worst thing you could ever do would be to sit in church and put your arm around your wife. That would be the worst thing for a pastor to ever do. And then I realized, oh, that's why all the women sit on the one side and all the men sit on the other. So they simply separate the sexes. Not that one's better or one's worse, because now we're all born again now. This is in the church. They just naturally do it because they don't want people to be offended by these displays of affection, right? Then I said, okay, if I can't put my arm around my wife, who can I put my arm around? Or hold a woman's hand. I can never hold my wife's hand in public. So I can hold your hand in public or your hand in public, but I can never hold my wife's hand in public. So the whole thing's reversed. They said you can hold a woman's hand that's younger than you and not married. So are you married? Okay, so I could hold her hand or her hand, and it wouldn't be seen as weird. In our culture, what are you talking about, Pastor? Don't go holding the people's hands that are in your church. That's absurd. But they're seen as father figures for younger ladies, and they're protecting them. It's not weird, it's not sexual, that's just the way that it is. Okay? Now I'm going to take this to the next level because we're in a cultures class. I never would do this on a Sunday morning service. Where I work, in most of the places, the women don't wear shirts at all. They never do. So I was told by the pastor, I want you to do a teaching on purity at a youth gathering. So in the front row are two young girls. They're 16 years old. Girls in that age, they get married young and they have kids young. So I got these two girls that are now completely developed and they've just had kids. So they're totally developed. No shirts. And I'm trying to teach on purity. Let me grab your Bible. It'll be easier. I'm trying to teach on Titus about purity. And what do I do to teach on purity? I'm only making eye contact. You see that? So I can't see your bodies anymore. All I can see is your eyes. Is anybody else in the room offended that these two young girls, now these aren't older ladies with down to the waist. These are young girls. I'm like, what? Pastor doesn't even notice.
Where were you?
I was in a refugee camp in Africa. Okay, so all of the remote parts of Africa are like this. One day, one of the pastors and I go out to a home that is three widowed women. They're a lot older. They were in their 60s, and they had one hut and a bunch of land that was given to them by the UN, but they weren't cultivating the ground, and we needed to grow corn to feed the kids in the feeding center that were starving. So pastor and I, African pastor, American pastor, we go out to meet these ladies. So these ladies, some of them are fixing the roof, and other ones are coming out. They come walking out. Now, they've got their skirts on. And in that culture, a woman will always cover from the belly, from the waist, all the way down to her feet. She'll never allow the upper parts of her legs to be shown because that scene is totally immoral. But they have no shirts on whatsoever. Okay, so you're my example again, because I can't do this with a lady. So everybody shakes hands, right? So as you lean forward to shake my hand, I lean forward, and this woman's boobs are coming out and slapping me on the back of my hand. 1, 2, 3, and you really shake in this culture, and you do this, and you shake, and she's doing this, and bam, bam, bam. Okay, you're done. I was dying. I was like, no. There's only so much I can take. I can't take grandma hitting the back of my hand with her boobs. I just can't do it. And I'm looking at the pastor, and he's smiling and laughing. Nobody's got an issue whatsoever. So then, I'm now in my Bible college with my older Bible college men. A lot of them are pastors, some of them are wanting to be pastors. And I said to them, this is about 1.5 years into our Bible college, we're now in the book of Titus. And I said, what triggers lust in your culture? Because in my culture, women always wear shirts. And if a woman doesn't have a shirt on, it makes guys go crazy. It fully triggers lust. And they said, really? You guys are triggered by that? And I said, so what do you call these? And they're like an udder on a cow. No different than an elbow. You can touch somebody's elbow, you can touch somebody's breast. It's no big deal. They're just like udders. What? And that's how they thought of it. And I said, what triggers lust for you? They said, we are triggered in our minds as men to lust after a woman if we see the shape of her legs. So our women always wear skirts or dresses, because if they're going to cover and they wear a dress, it's always a full dress or a full skirt. And I said, so is that why your women don't wear pants? And they said, absolutely. If we see the shape of the woman's legs, our minds go crazy. So for the Americans, we go to the beach or we go to church, and then I'm home on furlough a month later, and I look around, and my mother, of all people, and she's like a soccer player and all this stuff, she's wearing the shortest shorts in the church. And I'm like, there's the pastor with his arm around his wife. There's the pastor's mom with her short shorts on, and everybody's praising the Lord. The Africans would have been so offended by our church service, they just said, you guys are all insane. We didn't think that we were insane. And when I go to their church, they don't have shirts on. What's going on around here? Does the Bible say that a woman shall cover her chest? Does it? What does it say? Modest. It says modesty. So modesty is defined by the culture. So when I'm in India, the ladies never have anything on their stomachs. So I'm on Air India or Air Sri Lanka, and there's this beautiful little stewardess, and she's trying to push something up into the overhead right above me, and her stomach is like on my nose. I'm like, this is wrong. Nobody else has a problem with it, but I'm literally touching my nose to her skin without knowing it. And they're okay with it. But what do the Indians cover? The shoulders. You'll never see an Indian woman with a spaghetti strap on. You can come into American church or American place, a place to eat or a place to do whatever, and we can wear a spaghetti strap. But for the Indian, you cover the shoulders and you cover the ankles. Right? But you can always leave this open. And then we have these Indian moms, these Indian grandmas with no middle part, right? And they've had a few babies and there's all this. What's that about? So I have to come back to, what does the Bible say? Modesty. Modesty is defined by the culture. You guys ever had experiences like this? Okay? Straight face, just keep it in. They're not trying to offend you. They're always trying to honor you. All right. Our next one, there is no way I'm eating that. There is no way I'm eating that. Now, you guys can't be my volunteers because you've seen this before. I need 2 volunteers to bring your chairs up here, and I'm going to serve you one of the first meals I was served when I was in India. Do I get any volunteers? Roll your chairs up. Come sit right here. You're going to move your Bible over just a little bit so we don't get anything on it. All right, volunteer number 1. Who else we got? All right, you're up. All right, here we are. There is no way I'm eating that. Now, in this one, now you're me and you're my wife, okay? I am an Indian Bible college pastor, and I have been a native evangelist my whole life, and my wife is sold out for the gospel, and we risk our lives constantly for the gospel, and we have our American missionary team here, and we want to honor them, all right? We want to totally honor them. So I say, and if you guys can back up just a little bit so I can see your faces, and then I'll serve you food. I say to you guys, we have American food for you. And all the Americans are looking at each other like, what's that look like? What's American food like in India? And they're like, okay, so my son got on a bus 2 days ago and traveled to a faraway town to buy American food. And it took him another day to get back. So we're so excited because we knew you guys are leaving tomorrow. The food's here tonight. Now I'm thinking in my mind, how much money, right, do they make? How much money did this cost? How much time did this take? So the wife is in the back and she's getting all excited and the kids are talking. Grandma and grandpa come in, the neighbors come in. Now everybody's watching. The Americans receive American food. Okay, so you guys come up to the table. First thing that happens is grandma goes running in the back and she comes out with 2 plates. Now this is exciting because you know what? They're going to give me plates. Not banana leaves filled with little microscopic worms that are going to destroy my intestines, but I've got glass plates. Then somebody else comes running out and they say, we found one of our neighbors with silverware because we know you guys don't like to eat with your fingers, and they don't use chopsticks, by the way, so we found forks for you. This was a big deal. They had to go to somebody's house to see if somebody had 2 forks. Now, the anticipation's building. Everybody's excited. Then the man rounds the corner and he says, look, we have American food for you, right? Where did they see this at? On some movie, right? Frosted Flakes, right? Raisin Bran. So now they take this American food, and there's no real right way to do this, so I'm just going to pour this right in front of you. And they fill this plate with, well, I think it was Frosted Flakes for us. For you guys, it's Raisin Bran. How much did this box cost in India?
It probably cost $20.
Probably a week's wage, just this box alone. Then I'm thinking, okay, what do I do now? And he goes, just a moment. My son just got done milking the cow, and we had to boil it because we don't have refrigeration. We boil stuff. So then they go running off to get their boiled milk. And they come back with literally steaming boiled milk. And as they pour the boiled milk on, those cornflakes that are totally, completely flat, or what's the word we use? They're like stale, soggy. They just turn in. I did boil this milk. No, this is real. This is real boiled milk. You smell it? This is full cream milk, because remember, there's no non-fat, there's no skimming it. This is 200-degree boiled milk. All right, you guys, we've prayed. Everything's happening. Go ahead, dig in.
You're like,
Honestly.
I've had worse, but I would try it.
Okay? Yeah. This is exciting. So everything in me says, get this away from me. While the guy sitting next to me, no, you're not watching, you're eating. Okay, you're eating. Okay? The guy next to me is my good friend, Pastor Richard. He's this huge iron worker. And he looks at it, and he looks at all of us, and he realizes really quick, we better make a decision. And he says, praise the Lord. And he grabs it, he brings it, he starts shoveling it in. And I'm trying to get the, you don't like it? He stopped eating it.
Honey, you need to eat
You're just moving it around the plate. You got to eat it. My son, 2 days on a bus, a week's income, right? The whole family's watching, and they're trying to figure out why we're not excited. And we're looking at it thinking, did you stop eating again? Okay, so we don't know what to do with this. So here's the question I have. Is this dangerous?
No.
Is this unsanitary? Is this going to make anybody sick? No, it's just awkward. They did their best to make us feel welcomed. You're still eating, right? Okay. They did their best to make us feel welcomed. Now you want to clean the plate, but how do you clean a plate? With a fork, with boiled milk, right? You're working on it. Yeah, it was just like that. So they're trying to make us feel at home. We feel totally, completely shocked by it. And what's happening here? A cultural misunderstanding. All right, you guys did great. You can leave it there. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Yeah, guys, take your chair back here. Let me give it back to you. All right. And anybody that wants this after class, I have a lot more for you. I'll give you more. I'm just going to leave it right there. Boiled milk and raisin bran. There's no way I'm eating that. Now, there's a lot of things that you can be served. We've eaten ants, bugs, snakes, whatever, right? When I was in Indonesia, I said, what do you guys eat for a delicacy? Can anybody guess what our Indonesian delicacy was, at least on the island I was on? There's over 1,000 islands. This was this single island. Puppies.
What?
Puppies. Dogs. They have puppy farms. And at 6 weeks, they slaughter their puppies and serve them. Just like we have chicken farms. So I'm wrestling through this whole thing. They want me to eat dog. The Bible doesn't say don't eat dog. The Bible doesn't say chicken's okay and beef sometimes and fish when you want to be healthy, right? The Bible says eat what's set before you. You guys follow me on this? This is what the New Testament says. Eat what's set before you. So if they eat snake, you can eat snake. If they eat fish, yeah.
How was it?
It was slightly cold, and I was a little concerned, like it's been a little while and they took it from somewhere else. So you take as many bites as you can, but I couldn't definitely finish it, right? But that's only one place. It was greasy because they had cooked it a weird way, but it's more of a beef than a chicken. Okay, when you're in Vietnam, what do they serve sometimes? Rats and cats. Right? Where we say a dog and a cat is a member of the family. We would never serve that. But when I am in America and I'm eating beef constantly, and a Hindu comes over, they're utterly offended that I would kill a cow. You guys aren't reading the same book that we're reading in the next third level. The third level book is by a guy from Nepal, and he goes, I committed the unpardonable sin in Nepal. I was going to kill a cow and eat it. They were going to put me in prison for life. All right, in their government, put me in prison for killing a cow, because to them it's a god. So everybody sees animals differently. The Bible simply says, what's set before you, eat it. Jesus never turned down a meal. The worst thing that we can do in any country is push away their food. Because how do they show hospitality? With food. How does all ministry start? With food. So this is the saying that we use in missions. If you're called to follow, say it with me, called to swallow. If you're called to follow, you're called to swallow. God is going to get you through it. No matter where it is, no matter what it is, God is going to get you through it. All through the Old and New Testament, people have ate things that we would say, that's crazy. But, yes, go ahead.
We're reading Peace Child,
Yes.
and they,
Cannibalism.
yes.
Never.
Okay.
Never. We would never partake in human flesh. That goes against everything the Bible says because it's connected to murder.
How would that be dealt with?
I don't know of any cannibal that's ever offered human flesh to an international person. It's never happened in my understanding. We could even email Don Richardson and ask him, has it ever happened? I don't think it ever would, because they know innately it's wrong. As you're reading Peace Child, and it says that those that have never eaten human flesh in that one, I think it was chapter 3, chided those, the ones that had eaten it, chided those that didn't eat it, like, you need to eat it and you need to taste it, and people are like, I'll never eat it. But in the end, they always end up eating it in some way, shape, or form. So they know innately that it's wrong. They'll eat
There's
bird.
something where
Yeah.
it says that they knew that when the Tuans came that would stop.
Right. They knew that when Tuans come, when the white man comes, you have to stop killing people, cutting off heads, and eating human flesh. So it's like this innate thing. It's never been an issue. Yes?
How about when, we go outside and they're like, don't drink water, whatever,
Mhm.
because it may, I don't know.
For safety.
Short-term trips, you don't
Right.
want to be sick for the whole time, but how do you deal with that? I mean, you don't want to get sick.
Right.
You don't want to say no.
Right.
It's a hard one.
Well, they get sick from the same dirty water, so they gotta serve pure water.
They know they do have better antibodies in their body, but they do get sick from that water. And they know that any international that's coming needs bottled water or something like that. So what do we do when we first go over? This be brand new people. We tell them, because we're not from this culture, we might get sick from that water, so we need boiled water, and then we drink it when it cools off. And anybody can get water from a well or a stream, boil it in an open fire, like a couple logs in a big pot. They boil it and then they just let it cool off. And then they serve us that. And they know that we can't drink. And oftentimes they'll give us Coke, right? Because they know, or tea. Tea is always safe. So if it's been cooked, you're way better off. And most cultures are okay with that. If they hand you water that you know hasn't been boiled, you could say to them, that might make me sick. And they'll understand that, and they'll get you something else. We've never been forced to drink bad water. A friend of mine hates milk. I don't know if he's lactose intolerant, but he hates milk. We're living there. He teaches at a church. They want to take him home to the pastor's house, which means all the neighbors come over. So now he's sitting inside of this little grass hut, smashed in with the pastor and his wife, and it's raining, and so he's a little bit cold. So they bring in the boiled milk, right? Because they don't have refrigeration. Or what do we do with our milk? We process it. They don't pasteurize milk. They boil it. And what they do is when they're done boiling it, they take this big strainer and they strain off all the stuff on the top, which is how you make cheese and butter and all that. And so they strained it, and he's watching the goop drip out of the strainer. And they're getting a little bit of the goop and a little bit of the boiled milk, and they hand it to him thinking that they're blessing him. And he's dying the whole time. And he goes, Rob, it took everything in me just to sip that thing, and I'm trying to hold it back. And then they fed me some beans and rice and whatever else and chicken. And then somebody else wanted to bless me also. So I had to go to their house and go through the same thing. He goes like 2 or 3 meals back to, and he's like holding it in, knowing that he's got to do it. He's got to do it. And so we just do it, right? Grin and bear it. Swallow it. Yes?
What about like food allergies?
If you truly have a food allergy and you're not lying, you can tell them, right? I'm allergic to milk. Oh, that's okay. We'll give you water. But everybody on the team is not allergic to milk. And everybody on the team isn't allergic to fish, or isn't allergic to this, or isn't allergic to that. So we've got to be very careful, because they'll read right through us saying, oh, I have an allergy. Yeah, that doesn't work. Yeah. Any great things you guys have had to eat on a mission trip? Anything fun?
it was only like, I think it was in Uganda.
Right.
And it was just, it was normal like beef, but it still had the hair on it.
Oh,
And that
sweet,
was
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the sweet beef, yeah, with the hair. So in Uganda, here's a good story. My wife says, go down to the market and buy meat. And this only happened like every once a week because meat was kind of expensive, so we didn't want to have meat all the time. So I go down to the market and I'm sitting there and the butcher says to me, the meat will be here in a moment. And so what am I expecting? I'm expecting a truck to pull up that's been air conditioned and these cuts of meat to come off of this truck and I can buy this cut or that cut or this cut. What happens? A huge truck pulls up, a flatbed truck filled with cows, and those Ugandan cows have these massive Texas longhorn horns on them. They untie this one cow because these 5 guys that are all butchers from different little shanty shacks that they work in, they get together and they all pitch in $20 and they pay like $100 for this cow. The driver gets the cow to the back of this flatbed truck, and the truck is like 6 feet off the ground. So the cow's way up here. The driver grabs the cow, slits its throat, blood's pouring all over the dirt, and then he kicks the cow off the back of the truck. And the cow falls on the ground, flailing everywhere, blood's pouring, and all 5 of these guys, like they rehearsed this, they start swinging machetes and axes, and they're dismembering that cow just like that. Within 5 minutes, this guy's got the back leg and he's hauling it home. Now remember, that's bone, hair, the whole thing. He hangs this leg up in his little shanty shack that I'm supposed to be waiting for the meat. And he says, how much meat do you want? And I said, I want 1 kilo. It's a little bit, it's close to 2 pounds. So he grabs a bag, which he's being nice, and he puts his hand in the bag, and he holds it like this, and he just takes his machete, and he just starts hacking at this thing. What am I getting? Bone, meat, right? And I'm getting hair in this. I bring it home to my wife, and I'm all, this is the freshest meat we'll ever have. And she's like, what am I supposed to do with this? I can't even work with this. It's just fragments of stuff. So then another missionary tells us months later, you need to buy a pressure cooker, because a pressure cooker, the lid clicks on and seals, and you can put terrible meat in a pressure cooker, cook it for half an hour, and it's like putting it in a crock pot for 8 hours, and you can cook all that stuff off, and the hair comes off easy, and the bones come out easy, and it's actually good tasting meat. So the pressure cooker saved our life. That's what it was like. So then I asked the guy that trained me, Wes Bentley, I said, Wes, how do you know what meat to get? And he goes, I look for the hanging meat that has the most flies. Because how could 10,000 flies be wrong? If all those flies want the meat, that's what I want. Of course, he was joking with me, but I'm like, dude, you're killing me. You're supposed to be training me, and you tell me how can 10,000 flies be wrong? Eat what's set before you. So as I'm living there and I'm learning more about their culture, I ask a guy, you told me that you want to marry that young girl. What do you do in your culture to go to her father and ask for her hand in marriage? He goes, oh, we don't do that like that here. We go to her mother, and when we go to a mother, we bring her a bowl of living ants. And he says when the rain comes, these termites, they're actually like white ants, they're termites, they come out of the ground and they're flying everywhere. You go up and you grab them out of the air, you pull their wings off, and you put them in the bowl, and the bowl's got like these really high walls on it. So this bowl is literally crawling with ants, and you go to your mother-in-law to-be, and you say to her, I would like your daughter's hand in marriage. And as she's eating these live white ants, she blesses the marriage. What are you talking about? Then there was a time where these massive termite mounds in our property had to be cut down. And as we're cutting into these termite mounds, now this dirt in a termite mound is like cement. It takes 10 men all day long to cut down a mound of dirt that you would think you could just push it over. You can't. The saliva in the termite makes them like cement. So they're hacking and sweating all day long. And the oldest guy in the group goes, I get the queen. I'm like, what does that mean? He goes, you just wait, Muzungu, meaning white man. You wait to see what I get. So we finally get down to the bottom of this thing, and it's just below the level of the dirt, because these termite mounds could be 6 feet tall. Just below the level of the dirt, they reach in and they grab the queen. And the queen looks like, in the front, a normal ant, like a big ant, which is like a big front part. But the back of the queen is about this big of just larvae. That's it. So he takes this front part, he puts it in his mouth, and he goes, and he empties the larvae bag, and he's like, someday, white man, you'll get your queen. I don't want anything to do with your thing. All right, let's not get stuck on eating. Let's continue on. The next story is, these are true examples from my life, You have got to be kidding. That is not a bathroom. You ever been in one of those situations? You've got to be kidding. I have just eaten something that has caused my body to respond, and I need a bathroom now. You ever had that thought? This has got to happen, and it's got to happen now. How many of you guys have traveled to places where they don't have toilets? Okay, so you guys have all done the squatty potty? I don't need to explain it to you. Did anybody tell you how to do it? Now, I'm not going to show you how to do it here, but there's a way that when the trousers, and don't ever call them pants, by the way, because the British wore pants underneath, trousers on the outside. So if I say to somebody, do I have something on my pants? They're like, why are you talking about your underwear? Because pants to the Africans or the former British is underwear. So how do you deal with your trousers when you're trying to use the squatty potty? You actually take them all the way down to your ankles, and then you pull your entire pants forward. Some people are stripping down in the bathroom and they don't know what to do, and they're like, how do I do this? There was a time when I was living in the city. They had a toilet inside, and that was really exciting. We would eat something bad, our stomachs would react, we could run to the bathroom, we could be what we would call normal, right? Normal. Then the power went out, and then the water stopped pumping. So now we had no electricity and no running water. Now what drove me crazy culturally is we were right on Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the second largest lake in the world. So from the house that I'm in, I can see the second largest body of water within sight, but we don't have any running water in the house. Knowing that one of the largest hydroelectric plants in the world is the one that comes out of Lake Victoria, and it provides power to our country. But our country was so corrupt, they would rather sell the power to the neighboring country because they made more money out of it than give it to their own people. So there I am, no electricity, no water, and I can see it all in front of me, and I'm starting to go crazy with this concept of what's wrong with this place? Why can't they organize something? I like things done right. I'm an engineer. I like to do things. I like to fix things. That's the way that I want things done. So I'm going through all this, and after 3 or 4 days of not being able to use the toilet in the house because there's no water to flush it, the host of our place was an African man, and he said, we have an outhouse out back. And you guys have all know that we had outhouses in America, right? Toilets are a new thing for America. I'm talking about a generational thing. Our grandparents grew up on farms. They had outhouses. We're like the second generations of people that have had flushing toilets, but because we're so used to them, we think that we are entitled to them. You ever had that thought in your mind? I'm entitled to have a flushing toilet because doesn't everybody? No, not at all. So I'm asking my own grandpa, when you were a kid growing up, what'd you do? He goes, we lived in upper New York, and it would be freezing, and we would go outside in the woodshed, and there was a hole in the ground, and that's when we went to the bathroom. That was normal American living 75 years ago. So why do I expect when I go to another country that's a lot less developed than mine, that they're going to have all these developed things? So I'm living with this African man, and he shows me this outhouse because the water goes out, the electricity goes out. That's their backup plan. So I go out there, and what do I find? I find a nice little, let's say a nice little building with a cement floor and a hole in it. What's the worst thing you can do as an American when you do that? To break out your flashlight and look down that hole. But don't we all do it? Don't we always do it? I go out there in the night, and what do I find? 2 cockroaches running around, and I'm freaking out. I can't believe there's a cockroach around here. This is so wrong, Lord. I'm going home. You never called me here. I can't preach the gospel. Why? Because there's 2 cockroaches in your bathroom. God gave you flip-flops for a reason. You take them off, you kill the cockroaches, you put them in the hole, you're done. But not this young missionary. What did I do? I go out there, I see the cockroaches, I do my business, and now I'm super nervous because I'm completely exposed. And as I look down that hole with my flashlight, what do I find? Thousands of cockroaches lining those dirt walls because it goes down 20 to 30 feet. And all you see is it breathing with cockroaches. And now you're exposed above all these cockroaches. Okay, I'll tell you the worst story ever. This is a totally different story. I'm fully sidetracking. I was in Sudan. It only happened to me once. I'm in Sudan, and I go to this outhouse, and for some reason there was a wall around it but no roof. And I walk up to it, and as I'm about to go to the bathroom, my clothes are off, I'm exposed, a bird flies out of the hole and hits me. I can't even explain to you. I screamed like a little girl. I'm trying to put my clothes on. I go running out, and the girls that were with me, they're like, Rob, what's wrong? I'm all, a bird, a bird. I was totally distracted. That's not my original story. All right, so now I'm back in the city. I'm exposed over this hole. There's all these cockroaches in it, and I'm thinking, this can't go on because I'm already going through culture shock, and this country's broken, and all this stuff is broken, and now I've got to use this pit latrine. You know what? If there's one thing in my life that I'm going to fix, that I'm going to control, that I'm going to own, it's this pit latrine. So I'm sitting there thinking how Americans do that. Like, how can I work this out? And I realized we have these cans of spray poison called Doom. Doom is for when you want to go to bed, you go in your room and you spray the room down, you get your mosquito net around your bed, you let the Doom settle, all the bugs die from this poison, and then you go in a half an hour later once the Doom is settled. So I'm like, okay, great, I got spray poison. I've got duct tape in my backpack or in my luggage. So I get 5 cans of poison and the duct tape. So I duct tape these cans so the sprayer is spraying on. Like in the old days we had foggers. You guys remember the days of foggers? So I make this Doom into a fogger can. I get 3 of them and I throw them down the pit. So now this pit's filling up with poison. I get 2 more, I turn them on and I set them where you would have your feet when you're going to the bathroom. I close the door and I step back all proud of myself. Like I'm going to kill these cockroaches and there's not going to be one cockroach left. And if one thing in my life is controllable, it's this bathroom, because in the night I don't ever want to see another cockroach. As I'm stepping back, my host, which is this kind, wonderful African man, stands next to me and he says, "Rob, what are you doing?" And then all of a sudden it hit me. As I looked at the house, cockroaches exploded out of the top because they weren't about to sit there and die. They ran away from it. And so as I used to have 2 cockroaches on the thing, now I have got thousands of cockroaches coming over the wall. They're coming down the front of the pit latrine. They're coming towards me. And as I'm backing up and my host is next to me, like, "What have you done to my house?" As we're backing up and there's a carpet of cockroaches running towards us, I hit my back on the kitchen wall. And as I get out of the way, the cockroaches pass me up and go right into this guy's kitchen and fill it. Fill it. I filled the neighbor's house, I filled the other neighbor's house, and I filled my host houses with cockroaches. Why? Because I wanted to control. I wanted to own. I wanted something that made me feel comfortable. Praise the Lord that my host had been a pastor for many years. He had been through YWAM. He understood cross-cultural differences, and he just simply forgave me. He could have put me on the plane and said, "Go home, white man. You've ruined my home." I opened, now it was a 2-bedroom home with 5 African men living there, myself and my wife, another married couple, and 2 other missionaries. The house is filled with people, and now it's filled with cockroaches. What's that all about? That's me trying to make something more comfortable, but what did I do? I created a crisis. Never try to change somebody's culture instantly. It's not going to happen. The only change that can take place happens gradually. Don't let your American concepts create a crisis in these places. Any thoughts on that? You guys are good? You're still working through the cockroaches? You ever seen those horror movies where the cockroaches are just everywhere and they're filling the room? It was just like that. Oh, at least a day. I mean, it was so embarrassing, I think I blocked it out. I just blocked it out. After that moment, like, you know when you get in a car accident and you see it all happening and then you block it out? I blocked it out. Yeah. I was shocked that the guy ever talked to me again. He was a major part of it. So now we have to ask ourselves the question, where does culture come from? Where does culture come from? We asked the question in the beginning of class. You answered the question. Where does our culture come from? Where do we get our culture? From our mother, right? So is our mother the expert in all things? Absolutely not. And is our mother's opinion valid anywhere around the world? No way. This is why the Bible speaks to all cultures. The Bible is multicultural. It speaks of things like kindness. Well, what is kindness like in another culture? It speaks of things like be polite and not rude. What are those things in other cultures? Our mothers teach us what's right, what's wrong, what's kind, what's rude. Our mothers teach us things like what's seemed as or what's seen as respectful and appropriate, what we would call loving behavior. So if I do something, let's say, pick my nose, because we had that example earlier, what would you guys say if I was at the pulpit at your church picking my nose while I was teaching the Bible? How offended would you be? I'm asking. Pretty offended. How would you judge my character?
I would think you're dirty.
Not just dirty, but what else would you think?
With no manners.
No manners. Okay, and then take it a little bit further. What about my heart? I'm a grown man, I know better, I've chosen to break culture. In the end, people say, I can't even respect him because he's probably just a rebellious sinner. So it goes from not polite to totally inappropriate to if you continue to do it, now it's just downright sinful. How can I listen to a guy preach the gospel that's that rude? He's actually just a prideful sinner. The whole time I don't even know what's happening because I'm satisfying my mom's culture in their world. I need to ask him, what did your mom teach you to do? How did your mom want you to live? These are things that must be understood. And if you let this go long enough, especially with unsaved people, they'll say, you're not even a Christian because you say those things or do those things or act that way. Let's use, for example, hand gestures. You guys all know the difference in hand gestures in countries? Have you ever dealt with this? Okay. My friend's in England, and he's teaching the Bible. And he says, point number one. No, he did it this way. He said, point number one, right? And he's talking about Romans. And he goes, point number two. And the whole audience freaked out. What in the world? Now, are you guys offended that I do this to you? This is flipping you off in England. This is peace, universally. But when I do this in England, I'm actually giving you the middle finger, which I can't even do in front of you because you all know what it means and I can't do it to you or I wouldn't be a pastor. So there this American pastor is in an English-speaking Western country. And he goes, point one, point two, and the whole audience goes, ah. So he said, Rob, if you ever come to my church, start with a thumb. Point one, point two, point three, you're totally fine. As long as the thumb's there, then it neutralizes the hand gesture. Every country has different hand gestures, so we have to learn them. If you just put up your hand this way, or for example, at the same church that we had the issue of picking the nose, I got up to teach the Bible, and I was nervous, so I put my hands in my pocket. And as soon as I did, I could tell the senior pastor, which is this old guy, got really upset. And now I got my hands in my pockets because I've never taught through a translator. I've never been in a foreign culture. I'm sweating to death. I'm on the equator. I'm trying to keep my thoughts together, and I'm nervous, so I put my hands in my pocket. I get done with the message, and the pastor gets up and says in his language, which I could tell he was angry with me, but I had no idea what he was saying, this guy's a sinner. Don't ever listen to him. So at the end of this message, I go outside with the younger pastors, and I said, what did so-and-so senior pastor say about me? Because he looked pretty mad. And they said, don't worry about it. I'm all, no, you guys, I'm not a shame and honor person. Tell me, what did he say about me? I want to know. And they said, when you put your hands in your pockets in our culture, it means that you think you're better than us. And so when a pastor does it from the pulpit, he's saying, you guys are just a bunch of ridiculous people, and I'm the king. I said, I had no idea. And they said, we know that you didn't know, but he doesn't know that, so he judged you as sinful and asked the people in the congregation to never let you share again. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Yes.
So when you go into another culture, well, we'll just focus on Western culture.
Right.
They don't have more grace on you. So like the pastor in England is the one too.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be offended, but I feel like if I were to see a guy from Africa picking his nose, I'd probably say, that's weird, but he's not from here.
Right.
Kind of show grace on
The
him,
tricky thing is if you're living there and it's happening every day, it grinds on you. Like if I was to, and I can't do it, if I was to flip you off every day in class when I counted with my middle finger as number one, you guys would just leave my class. After a week, you're like, I can't take it anymore. I just can't take it anymore. So that's what I'm talking about. It's like those one-time interactions, we have grace, they have grace. We're more international now, so we see the differences. But when you're living with them, if you keep offending them, they'll simply just throw you out of their culture. So we've got to be open with that. I was reading Lectures to My Students, which was written when? 1860 by Charles Spurgeon in England to his British students. And he said in there, you must dress a certain way, you must speak a certain way, and whatever you do, never put your hands in your pockets when you preach the gospel. Well, really? So actually it's a British culture from the early 1800s given to the Africans. They took it on. I forgot about it. I came over and offended them because my ancestors taught them never to do that. So it wasn't an African thing, it was a British thing because Charles Spurgeon said the same thing. So, being careful with culture. Our mother gives us this culture. What does the Bible say about culture? How should we interpret culture from a biblical perspective? The simplest way to say it, and this is what we can do in this limited time that we have, is we look at the 10 Commandments. And we say, if it's a lie, it's a lie, right? That's a sin. If it's theft, it's wrong. Oh, I got to start with my thumb. If it's a lie, if it's theft, if it's murder, if it's worshiping another god. So I'm not going to go into a Hindu temple with the Hindu guy I'm ministering to and bow down to his statue with him and then take the ash, which is the incense, off the statue and put it on my head to show you that I've been to the temple and that I'm a faithful Hindu. I'm never going to do it. It's not going to happen. Why? Because it's idolatry. But can I sit with an idolater and talk to him? Yes, absolutely. Paul says, eat what's set before you without what? Asking questions about where it came from. So Paul is saying you can work with people that are idolaters as long as you're not an idolater yourself. So I look at the 10 Commandments and I say, if it's not stealing some man's wife, if it's not theft, if it's not lies, if it's not those basic concepts of the 10 Commandments, I can do it. So we say cross-culturally, if it offends God, it breaks the 10 Commandments. But the other 10,000 things that offend your mom, you don't worry about them. You can do them. Meaning, I'm not saying go to Africa and pick your nose if you live in this culture, but after living there for a year and walking down their dusty streets, I was like, at the end of the day, trying to work with it, right? Because I can't do it. I just can't do it in public. Now, you guys all know that we do pick our noses. You know that. But where do we do it? In private. How do we do it? How did our moms teach us to do it? With a tissue. Everybody's got to clean their nose out at some point in time. So you use a tissue and you do it privately and you check yourself in the mirror to make sure nothing's left over when you come out of the bathroom. We all do it, but we do it a certain way. So now I'm in Africa and there's no tissues. There's no like cloth to blow your nose. There's nothing like that. So there I am walking down the street and I'm trying to work on whatever they work on. They can put their, I can't do it. So I'm doing this and I realized, you know what? If my mom had never taught me not to pick my nose, I would feel really good right now just working that stuff out, because this is where we're living, right? Same with toilet paper and everything else. So if it offends my mom, don't worry about it, as long as it doesn't offend God and the 10 Commandments. But if you do it, don't tell your mom that you did it when you got home. That's the answer. That's the key to that. So you can say to your mom, and I don't care what age you are. I'm 45 today, right? Not my birthday, but I'm 45 at the moment. When I go back to my mom's house, I don't tell her these stories. I don't tell her about eating with my fingers. I don't tell her about any of that stuff. Why? Because she'll slap me. Son, I taught you how to do that better. I was living in Sri Lanka. They ate with their fingers every day. And one day I got in a debate with a couple Sri Lankans. One was a Christian, one was not. And we were having a nice dinner as a group, and it's burning hot outside. We're talking on the equator, on an island. You're just on fire. And what are we eating? Curry. My mouth's on fire, my skin's on fire, I'm sweating out of below my eyes and sweating on the back of my neck, and they're just working it with their fingers, and I just can't take it. I can't take the physical heat, I can't take the spicy food, I can't take any of it. And I said, why don't you guys use chopsticks? They're like, why would we want to use chopsticks? I'm all, maybe just a fork, just every once in a while. And they said, you want us to take a piece of metal and put it in our food and put that metal in our mouth? That would make our food taste like metal. We want to experience our food, and when we eat it with our hands, it tastes better. Now everything in me is saying, gross. And they're saying to me, why would you want to put it on metal? So I start eating with my fingers, and I realize it does taste better. Now that sounds crazy, but it does. But the first time I tried to eat with my fingers, right, and I could never show my mom this, I made a mess of myself, because in America, we don't know how to get the food in our mouth. In Sri Lanka, it's rice and curry. So I got this bowl of rice and curry. Now we're talking about saucy curry. How do I get my fingers in there and get that in my mouth without getting it all over me? So I'm teaching at this Gospel for Ages Bible College, training native missionaries. These are guys who are risking their lives to preach the gospel. And I'm sitting with them over lunch. We just got done with like a couple chapters in the morning. We take a lunch break, and they're all eating with their fingers. Now I'm trying to do it, and I've got rice and curry all over my shirt. Don't know how I'm supposed to get back up and teach these guys. And they're like, what are you, a child? You can't keep your food in your mouth. So I go home from this embarrassing weekend, and I asked my British friend that married a Sri Lankan woman, hey bro, I was at your house and I noticed you eat with your fingers. How do you do it? He goes, oh, did you get the food all over your face when you tried? I'm like, yeah. He goes, yeah, we all do. He said, because when you eat with a fork, you open your mouth, you put the food in your mouth with a fork, you close your lips and you take the fork out. That's just the way that we've been trained to do it, a spoon or a fork. He said, when you're eating with your fingers, you bring your tongue out And when your tongue's sticking out, you put the food on your tongue, and then your tongue brings it back in. But you don't see that happening. It's happening so quick that we don't realize it. So I had to try in the mirror, I won't do it in front of you, it would be way too embarrassing. Stick my tongue out, put the rice on my tongue, get it back in my mouth. It took weeks to eat rice without it going down my shirt. And then once I learned it, then I could be like the people. So I go to the next Gospel for Asia weekend training their missionaries. Now they serve me spaghetti. Try to eat spaghetti with your fingers. It's a mess. It's a mess. I'm trying to eat it, and there's noodles everywhere, and there's no napkins on the table, right? There's no napkins. It was insane. Totally insane. Okay, I don't want to get too far off on all that. That's just a bunch of craziness. If it doesn't break the 10 Commandments, go with it. But don't tell your mom. Almost every culture I've been in, would be more village cultures. They spit all the time. They spit. I think I spit 20 feet away. Like why would you do that? They'll be talking to you and spit. And I've seen these ladies. I'm talking to these older ladies, and they're talking up a storm, and I'm getting a translation of it, and they'll just turn and go and spit. And I'm thinking, man, my mom would come halfway across the world and smack me across the face if I spit like that in anybody's presence, especially a lady. They are American manners that I'm holding on to, not God's manners. So what are God's rules? Where are they found? They're found in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19. So let's just read through this in the last couple minutes we have in class. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19. Paul wants us to become all things to all people. Verse 19, Paul says, "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them." So notice these key words. I am free, but yet I've made myself a servant. This is where the whole thing hinges. I am free, I don't have to do it, but for the sake of my Lord and for the sake of his message, because I'm his ambassador, I have made myself a servant, and I do what makes them happy, not what makes me happy. And then he says, notice this in the verse, so that I might win more of them. Is that what your translations say? More of them. This means, think of it this way, that this plate of food has the gospel hinging on it. If I don't eat it, they won't respect me. If they don't respect me, they won't hear my message. So this plate of food has eternity weighing in the balance. This is when it becomes real to me. It's not just me being polite or being culturally sensitive. This is somebody's eternal destination. Paul says, I will win more of them if I'm more sensitive and more of a servant. Verse 20, to the Jew I've become a Jew in order to win the Jews. Now, Paul was born and raised as a Jew. And Paul knew that the Jews had how many laws? We already said it in this class. 615 laws is how many laws the Jews had. And then they wrote all of the other books that added on a whole bunch of more laws. There was like 1,000 laws for the Jew. Paul knew that, and Paul says, when I'm with them, I obey all of those laws. Every single one of them, so that I can win them. He did it. He didn't want to do it, but he did it. To those who are under the law, I have become as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. So he looks at their situation and he says, I'm going to live like they do. Even though I'm free from that law, I'm going to live under that law. And I'm going to do what they do so they can respect me. Verse 21, Paul switches it to the other side. To those who are outside of the law, I have become as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ. Do you guys know what the law of Christ is? What's the law of Christ? Love your neighbor as yourself. The law of love. Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those who are outside the law. And as we know, Paul would do whatever he had to do with the different people that he's with. Verse 22, to the weak I've become weak, that I might win the weak. This one's really hard. A weak person to me is somebody that's not educated, that doesn't have toilet paper, that doesn't speak a language that common people speak, that eats very strange foods, that only lives in the middle of nowhere, that's never driven a car, that literally dresses like one of the poorest people I've ever known. Paul says, Rob, become a refugee. That's what he's saying right here. To the refugee, I have become a refugee. Wow, isn't that what my Lord did? when he came from heaven to earth and lived amongst us. To the weak he became weak, that he might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some of them. This is where it all comes down. Yes, Jay?
So I have a pretty safe understanding of this, but for the sake of the class, if I'm in the Czech Republic, I'm going to various houses in the day, and they're serving me Schlivovitz off
Right.
the back shed.
Alcohol.
Pure grain alcohol.
Alcohol, yeah.
Or if I'm in Great Britain and
Mhm.
everybody finishes the day and goes to the
Big thing of beer, right. What do? We sip it. Okay, that's the answer. We sip it. So my friend that was doing stuff in Kosovo, and she'd go from tent to tent, every person in Kosovo would serve her a shot of vodka or whatever it was, some homemade spirits, and she goes, I had to sip it. But of course, if I drank it, the first one of them would make me drunk. And by the 20th tent, I would have been a blithering idiot, right? So she goes, I would just sip it. And they would know that I don't really drink, but I showed them I respected them. If I'm in England and all the pastors, when I go to the pub afterwards and they serve me this big old pint of ale, what do? I sip it. Kind of like sipping the foam off the top of your latte. I sip the foam off the top of the beer. I hate beer. I hate alcohol. I was an alcoholic. I don't want anything to do with it. But I'm with them. I do as they do. But I don't drink the whole thing because then I'll have a mind change and then I'll be in sin. Okay? Yes?
What about something like hookah in the Middle East?
Smoke it, right? Smoke it. I mean, it's okay. The Bible doesn't say thou shalt not smoke. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say thou shalt not tattoo themselves, right? It doesn't say any of that stuff. And the only verse about tattooing is a pagan worship. It's got nothing to do with modern day tattooing. The verse that says don't tattoo yourselves, in the same verse it says don't shave the corners of your beard. So here we are with shaved faces, but we can't have tattoos. It's not the right understanding of the context. So if it's smoking, if it's drinking, we do a little bit of it. Like, do I smoke a peace pipe with a native Indian? Absolutely not. One puff of that, and I'm stoned as can be, right? So there's certain things that I do that I can't, there's certain things I can't do.
What do you see in that instance with the Native American?
You would tell them that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol, and I know this is part of your culture, and I'm not judging you, but I just personally can't do it, you know? And of course, I would drink coffee or something else, while another culture says you can't drink coffee. Now, let me give you an example. What was it? D.L. Moody. Yeah, D.L. Moody was a pretty big guy. He went to England to visit with Charles Spurgeon. Okay? So Moody goes to England, knocks on his door. Spurgeon opens the door smoking a pipe or a cigar. Either way, he was smoking tobacco because he was British. And D.L. Moody's looking at him like, man, I can't believe you smoke tobacco because the Americans can't smoke tobacco and be Christian. And Spurgeon looks at him and goes, I can't believe you got a little bit of extra weight because he was this portly guy around you. I can't believe you can be a Christian and eat that much. So there's these two men of God that started whole movements that are judging each other because they don't have the same culture. So they're all non-essentials. They're just small things. So we could talk about all of that in level 2. This is just to conclude tonight. God's rules regarding culture are found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Let me just read through these very quickly with you. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, God says love should look like this. Love should be patient, kind, not irritable, not rude, not insisting on its own way, and not, this is irritable, sorry, that was the wrong one the first time, and not resentful. All of those words are culturally defined. What is patience? In Africa, it's 2 days. In America, it's 5 minutes. If you say you're going to meet me and you're 10 minutes late, I'm not patient anymore, and it's okay because you've been rude by not telling me. In another culture, you could wait 2 whole days, and that's when patience runs out. So all of these things are culturally defined. So I have to ask myself, am I being loving? Now, let me conclude with one final analogy. You guys have all seen this if you've been in my cultures class before, but I love what we call the spaghetti analogy. The spaghetti analogy says, blessed are the who? The flexible, for they shall not break. This is me without cultural sensitivity. I get into a situation and God's working in my life causes my rigid body to do what? To break. But if I allow myself to be boiled in those trials, and I embrace that suffering and I embrace those trials, I turn into cooked spaghetti. And then God can use me and mold me to do whatever He wants. But when I remain saying, this is my way and I only want it done this way, and then God starts to break me, I fracture and I destroy the work of the gospel. Let us become cooked spaghetti through culture shock so that we can be the ambassadors of Christ here and there. This all goes back to God's brought the internationals here amongst us. God is going to use you with radical Hindus. I've seen them get saved. It's miraculous. It's possible. God is going to use you with ancient Buddhists in their hundreds waiting to hear the gospel for the first time. We have stories about all this. God is going to use you at Voice of the Refugees to reach women that have been trapped in a suppressive religion their entire life, and they don't know it. But God's going to use you to reveal to them. God's going to use you in some of the poorest places on the planet with some of the most desperate people. God is going to use you with child prostitution in places like Asia, where just one moment of being a part of it, it makes you want to rip out your heart and say, God, I don't even want to know this is happening. But we're here for such a time as this. This is why we do what we do. God's going to use you with totally unreached Stone Age tribes. I took this photo of a little boy. He now attends a church for the first time in his life. I never would have said, 20 years ago that God would allow me to be a part of him and all of these kids' salvation. But just pressing in through culture and being a part of it. God's going to use us. There's a bunch more stuff on my website if you want to learn more about it. Join us in level 2. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the moment to have fun, to laugh, to be challenged, to have our hearts ripped out, to have our paradigms challenged and changed and hopefully rebuilt into your character. Jesus, make us like you. Make us the servants of all. Use us on this earth to shine your love and your light. In your name we pray. Amen.